Okay, we are going live. It is setting up, and let's see. Confirm. Okay, well, I think that we are live on Facebook. I'm very excited to be here today. Nikki Gonzales is here with us. We are hosting our first ever Campside Chats with esteemed scientists. So for those of you just joining, my name is Sarah and I work for Green Kid Crafts. You might know us as a subscription science and art craft company. We send these boxes around the world and kids around the world are doing crafts thanks to Green Kid Crafts. We are passionate about science and about raising the next generation of scientists and environmental leaders. So this summer, we're doing something really exciting for our members, which is hosting a summer camp. So for those of you that don't know, our summer camp is 3 boxes, June, July, and August. And in addition to getting our boxes, there's some extras, some extra activities they can do at home, some perks, some giveaways, and what's happening today, which is called Campside Chats with esteemed scientists. So every month we are asking our summer campers to submit a question, a science question about, or anything question really, but something that they couldn't find the answer to and would really love to hear from an expert directly. And so we rounded up all those questions. We got about 20 questions to go, or from everybody. And then we looked around and we said, well, who do we know that could actually answer all these questions? And this month, the questions were all about the moon. So even though there's a moon here in my background and a little campsite fire, we thought, let's reach out to find a real lunar geologist and enter Nikki Gonzales. So Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. I know we're excited. I know the kids are excited. And maybe just as we get started today, I'll do a quick introduction and then we'll get to these questions because that's the exciting part. So Nikki Gonzales is joining us from Arizona, and she has been researching lunar geology, and she's working at a research center called the, I hope I don't get the name wrong, the LROC, which is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter Camera. So this is pretty exciting. So maybe you could start us off, Nikki, and tell us about this LROC. What is it? And also tell us about your background. What's behind you?
Certainly, yeah. So LROC is owned by Arizona State University. It's a set of cameras aboard a NASA satellite that's currently orbiting the moon and has been orbiting the moon for 10 years. So we're really excited to have this opportunity. And one of the other things we do, so we take a lot of pictures of the moon, but we also go back and we work with a lot of the Apollo data from 50 years ago when we actually landed on the moon. And that's where my background comes from. You can see one of the lunar landers right there, where they actually were able to get to the moon. And this is one of the views that they saw when they got there. So it's pretty fun and exciting to be able to work with all this.
That is so exciting. As we were talking this morning or exchanging this morning about this event today, I had this realization that maybe some of you will have too, which is that all the really cool new pictures we see from the moon come from LROC, or most of them, I'd say, right? And so this is something that's probably we know of. Most of us have seen pictures without realizing the story behind and the science behind. So that's really exciting. So before we get into the questions, I was hoping maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got into studying the moon.
Certainly, yeah. I've always found space to be one of those things that's just fascinating. You know, I loved Star Trek, Star Wars, any sort of science that focused on things that weren't like us and what we're used to seeing out here. You know, even marine biology, going to the ocean. I grew up in a that was pretty close to the ocean. So I love to visit the ocean and see all the different life and the way things could be if it, wasn't on land. And so looking at other planets was kind of like a second nature to me, just looking around and being like, wow, how cool would it be to be there instead of here? As amazing as Earth is, there's so many possibilities out there. And I was always one of those kids that, was focusing on science. Everything I did when I wasn't doing homework was science, and I loved it. So when I got to college, I was convinced that I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. I took those classes and it was fun, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. So just for the fun of it, I took a geology class because I love science, so why not, right? And I ended up switching my major to geology. I loved it that much because it was one of those things that gave me an opportunity right away rather than taking a few years to get into the industry and get used to things. I had an opportunity to start researching right there, all this amazing lunar geology while in college. And that was what I wanted to do. So I switched and here we are.
Well, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. And thank you for also making the point that, sometimes you don't know until you get into college exactly all the options out there. And I love that you found your calling and were able to, explore that. So that's really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
Glad to.
So let me get into the questions. So the first question we have that we received was submitted by Sarah Rayland, and it's, what is the moon made of?
That is a very good question and a very important one. So let me share my screen real quick.
Yeah, please.
And I'll show you some pictures. All right. So when you look at Earth, if you ignore the clouds, you notice two things, right? The waters and the land. But there's there's really weird thing going on there, right? There's two different heights. There's the land, and then why is all this stuff underwater? Which is totally fascinating. So there's two different types of volcanic rocks on Earth. Because a long time ago, Earth was like all molten and then it solidified. So what we're looking at is the continents are actually a different type of rock than the ocean floor, and they're floating on top of it. The continents themselves are made of what we call granite, one type of volcanic rock, and the ocean floor is made of basalt. Basalt is a little bit heavier, so the granite is floating on top of it. And the moon is actually made of the same stuff as the ocean floor. It's made of basalt.
So cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that one was floating on top of the other, and I'm sure that that's something a lot of others didn't know either. So thank you. So basalt and granite on the Earth, and the moon is just the basalt.
Yeah.
So interesting. So the next question, which might be related to this, is from submitted by Heather, and I think her son Carter, who's 5. I hope you're watching. Hi, Carter. Is, why is the moon white when we see pictures of it?
That is also a very good question. So let's try, let me show you a different picture now. So if you look at the moon, you'll actually notice there's 3 different shades, right? So we've got dark gray, a light gray, and then like a white. And from Earth, they don't really have any colors, which is kind of weird, right? The whole moon looks completely colorless. It looks like it was a black and white photo. So if we take a look at the different colors, I can tell you a little bit about that, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the lack of color. So first, you've got the light gray stuff, and that's the oldest stuff on the moon. It's about 4 billion years old, and it's so old, it's completely covered in craters that have covered the entire surface in a blanket of dust and debris. And then we get to the dark gray. The dark gray is what we call mare. Mare means sea in Latin. Hundreds of years ago, people used to think that these were oceans on the moon. Now we know they're not, but these were formed a little differently than the light gray material. So what happened was these were actually craters. it brought up some volcanic material. And for those who were studying volcanoes recently, this covered the area in shield volcanoes, pyroclastics, and lava flows. It was a very exciting time on the moon. And these are about 2 to 3 billion years old. So a little younger than the other stuff. And then the white stuff is actually the youngest. Those ones are recent impacts that are from the last billion years or so. So I know these are huge timescales that we're talking about right now, still billion-year timescales, but that's what geology looks at, things over billions of years, which is pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Those ranges are so hard to wrap your head around, aren't they?
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Which is even crazier when you look at it and you think, but there's no color there at all. For 4 billion years, there's no color, right? Well, actually, if we exaggerate the colors in this picture, let me show you a different one. It's gonna only let me do this way. That's weird. Oh well. If we exaggerate the colors, we see this. There actually are colors on the moon. There's some orange, some blue. So,
wow, I did not know that. So how can you see these colors? Is that what the LROC does? Kind of see this level of detail and pick up these little tiny color differences?
That is one of the things, yeah. So we have 2 different kinds of cameras. We've got a black and white camera and a color camera. So this was taken with our color camera. And if you just pull out the colors, kind of exaggerate them a little bit, you end up with a picture like this. And if you're on the surface, it looks like that, which is really cool. So that's some orange volcanic glass that was found by Apollo 17. Yeah.
I did not know that. Well, thank you so much, Carter, first of all, for asking this question, because I thought it was an easy question, and actually it's a pretty complex one. So everybody who's watching and joining just now, we're so glad to have you here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to meet with a lunar scientist, Nikki Gonzales, who is answering our Green Kid Craft Summer Kid questions about outer space. So if you guys want to take a moment and say hi in the comments, tell us your kids' names. We'd love to see it and hear it and know you're there and watching. Okay, so I have another question for you, Nikki. This one is from Cole, and Jennifer, Cole's mother, submitted this, or Cole's caregiver. I shouldn't make that assumption. The question is Planet 9, aka Planet X, a planet or a black hole? Cole thinks it is a planet because there's not a halo of dark matter that's yet been found. Is that correct? So this is kind of, I think, a bigger question. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Nikki, and maybe you can help us wrap our heads around this one.
Yeah, so this is one of the interesting questions that comes to a lot of scientists, and is kind of one of those things where you have to teach students to tell the difference between a hypothesis, a theory, and a fact, right? So like a fact being, we know there are 8 planets in the solar system, or versus a hypothesis like this one. So this is a fascinating one. The idea of Planet X comes from a math problem that scientists were doing. They were looking at the orbits of planets and how much they weigh and how they interact with each other while orbiting the sun. And they figured out things don't quite add up like we expect them to. So there must be something else out there. And their guess was that this was way beyond Pluto even, so far out there that it would be really hard to see. And so far, that's all the evidence that there is to support it. So that's why we call it a hypothesis, because it's a little bit, it's something that could be there, but we don't have enough evidence to prove one way or the other. Mm-hmm. If we did, currently right now, they think it's probably about 4 times the size of Earth. So it would be a planet if it's there. But if we can observe it and see it, then we would have more evidence, and then we might be able to call it a theory. And then if we eventually did, we're able to take a good picture of this and see the surface, it could be a fact that it was there. So there you go.
This is a great question. That's a great answer. And mind-boggling to me that something 4 times the size of the Earth could still be unknown. But I think we have to remember the distances and the scale involved here, right? Because
exactly,
instinctively, intuitively, you'd probably think, well, you'd see it if it were that big. But of course, when it's so far away and you don't know where to look, it's another question entirely. So
exactly, yeah. Like, you know, Pluto takes over 100 years to go around the sun once compared to Earth, which
wow,
is just crazy to think about.
that is. All right, well, thank you for that answer. I hope, Cole, that answers your question a little bit. Hi, John. Thank you for joining us. I think we have a time lag, but I'm just seeing that pop up. Okay, I have another question here, which is, does the Earth's moon have another name? Because some other planets' moons get other names.
That's correct. It does have another name. The Earth's moon is called Luna, which I think means moon in Latin. So that's where that comes from, but that is its official name. But more often you see it written as the moon,
Right.
even though there are hundreds of moons in the solar system.
Interesting. Interesting. That's okay. So Luna, I knew that was the Latin term, and I did not know that that was the official name either. So thank you for that question. Okay, I have another question for you. Here we have, how many flags are on the moon, and are there other man-made things on the moon?
Yes, there are lots of man-made things on the moon. So I mentioned earlier the Apollo missions. Right here, we've got one artifact they left behind, which is what we call a lunar module. So this carried humans to the surface of the moon. And from that, there are 6 different landing sites from 6 different Apollo missions. Each one brought 2 men to the moon. So there have been 12 men on the moon. And each mission, they planted a flag. So there are 6 flags on the moon. But beyond that, before the astronauts even set foot on the moon, we actually sent other robots to the moon to kind of find out what it was. You know, if we were to put humans on there, would they be able to stand on the surface? What's the surface like? All those sorts of questions. So we have had robots on the surface of the moon for more than 50 years. I think about 60 years now. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And we are still putting robots on the surface of the moon today. In fact, last month, I just attended a conference about some of the new ways that the new places that scientists want to visit that we haven't yet seen. So we want to look at the polar regions and see if there's ice on the moon, because that would make a big difference if we want to send humans back to stay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so interesting. Well, thank you. Gosh, I had no idea there were so many things on the moon. Okay, wonderful question. Thank you for that one. And I have another question here from the audience that I think you'll be able to answer. From Michael, it looks like Michael is asking you, Nikki, have you ever touched a moon rock? And what is that like?
I wish. I have not actually touched a moon rock. One of the things I wanted to do this summer was NASA every year has a little, it's very similar to a summer camp, where you get to go to Houston and look at all their moon rocks and learn the techniques to handle them properly. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it because of COVID, but that's one of the things that I'm getting there. I don't know what it's like. We have one in the LROC building. If anyone's ever in Arizona at Arizona State University, we have a moon rock on display that you can come visit, which is pretty darn cool.
That is pretty amazing. Cool. Yeah, I know a lot of things have been canceled with everything going on, and it's I guess it's not the kind of thing that translates virtually.
Unfortunately, yeah, I wish.
I know. Okay. Well, thank you for the question, Michael, and for the answer, Nikki. Okay, I have a slightly different question for you here, also from our summer campers, but more about homemade rockets. So some of you campers will remember that one of the fun activities we gave was how to build a rocket in your backyard. and we gave a little tutorial on how to do that. And we even have one of our team members who made a video of it that we're sharing later on this week. It is pretty cool. So the question here submitted by Mike is, how high can these homemade rockets go? And you might not know the answer to this, but we're going to try it anyway.
That is a very good question. I think it depends on the type of rocketry you're doing. If you're using the baking soda rockets, if you get a smaller bottle, if it's a little bit lighter, those will go higher. Those could probably go up to 25, 50 feet if you're lucky. Or if you do bottle rockets, when you just put air and water, maybe a little bit of water in a bottle, and then you pump it up with a bike pump, those will go a little higher. Those are pretty cool too. Maybe we could team up and do something about bottle rockets at some point. That would be fun.
That would be really fun. We would love that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, Mike, I kind of feel like this question could go back to you. How high can your homemade rocket go? I feel like there's a little science experiment in the making that we can try out in our backyards. But thank you for the question and for taking this answer as well. So I think the last question I have before we, get to the end of this, we only have a few more minutes, is how come some planets have atmospheres where you can even breathe? And I don't know if that's something that you can speak to, but yeah.
I can, yeah. So that's one of the fascinating things about geology is it requires a specific set of things, and we don't know all the requirements yet. But what we do know is that it really helps if your planet has a magnetic field like Earth does that protects it, because otherwise the sun will just blow the atmosphere right away. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere. It's outside of the Earth's magnetic field, and it's about a third or a sixth the size of Earth comparatively, so that it might have enough gravity or enough of a magnetic field to protect it and hold an atmosphere there. So there's no atmosphere on the moon, versus here there's an atmosphere. Or if you look at Mars, it's about a third the size of Earth. It doesn't have a magnetic field, but it used to. So today there's a very thin atmosphere, just a little bit of what's left. But when it had a magnetic field, it had an atmosphere, and there was a lot more going on. It had a water cycle similar to Earth's, but it wasn't made of stuff that humans would be able to breathe. It was more carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. What made Earth's atmosphere breathable actually was about 2 billion years ago, the first life forms started showing up in the oceans. The oceans was the one place where there was a lot more oxygen. But these critters were called cyanobacteria, and that really just means blue-green algae. And they started producing a lot of oxygen, which allowed bigger and bigger animals to form. And once we started getting plants, those started really clearing up the atmosphere. And now we have humans. But that initial burst of oxygen, we geologists like to call the Great Oxygenation Event. Pretty cool term. So
that is pretty cool. And all started with blue-green bacteria. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. And I think there's so much left to explore on the moon, and I can imagine that there's a lot of projects and initiatives at your work and hard to prioritize them and knowing where to start. But thank you for taking the time today to answer these questions from the kids. And maybe as we wrap up here, if there is anything you could say to kids who are considering studying science, or what kind of advice would you have liked to have as a budding young scientist? So would you care to share a few words?
Sure. Yeah, that is a very good question. Let's see. I was always one of those kids that was a little more shy. And so I guess one of the things I wish I had heard a little more was, don't be afraid, just go out there and try it. The only way to learn or the best way to learn is to do it yourself. So go out there, try. If you're fascinated in science, don't feel that makes you unpopular or anything, because later in life, people are going to be coming to you for a job. So follow the science that you love. even if it's all science is cool, you'll figure out what you want to do later. And, you know, that's one of the things that I didn't expect and that I found fascinating and unexpected was I found something else that I loved, but still in science. Yeah, so just don't give up and keep trying.
I love that, Nikki. That's really inspiring, and I think it's such beautiful words. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure it'll speak to some people watching this. Okay, so thank you for taking the time to answer these questions. There's one more topic that maybe some of you who are watching are curious to know, and that's who's the winner of our giveaway this month. So we promised to announce it during this session, and here we are. So we made a little announcement that one lucky winner who submitted a question would win a very cool backyard game called an Aero Sport. And we're excited to pick a winner today. So I'm going to try here to share my screen. Let's see if it works. And Jana, my team member, has prepared a little spinner. Now, can you see the spinner okay on your screen? I hope so. Okay, because I can't really tell anymore. So this is the spinner, and what I'm going to do is click this, and it spins the wheel, and let's see, we'll pick a winner, and the winner is, oh, very close, Ruby. Okay, so Ruby Koviak, we're going to be reaching out to you to share with you this fun game, and we'll have it shipped to you to make your backyard exciting and fun this summer, to add to your backyard summer adventures. So Aerosport is an inclusive backyard sport. It's really fun for the whole family, and I think you're really going to enjoy that. So yeah, so thank you everyone for participating and submitting your questions and watching the live and supporting us. And my last thing to say is that it's not too late to join in on summer camp. So if you're interested in joining us, you can head on over to Green Kid Crafts. We still have July and August coming, and we have a monthly session with a scientist expert who will answer your questions. And probably beget more questions and inspire more, you know, inquiries in your kids, and hopefully get them really interested in science. So thank you everyone for taking the time. And Nikki, thank you again for joining us and being so insightful with your knowledge about the moon and outer space. And yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm glad I could share with you guys. And yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll close this out, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day if you've been watching, and we'll post this later. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.